Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the WBA Canada channel. Today, I'm here with a very, very, very special guest. It's former West Bromwich Albion striker, Andy Hunt. Andy, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Baden. Thank you very much for having me, and looking forward to chatting with you. That was a lot of very, very, very's.
Yeah.
How many did you give my strike partner, Paul Pesky-Salido?
I think I gave him a fairly close amount.
You probably gave him a couple more because he's Canadian, right?
Yeah, probably. With my guests, my first question always is, just how did you get into soccer?
So my parents were very supportive of me when I was little, and I think I loved the game from when I could walk. So always kicking a ball. We played a lot of football when I was small. We played in the school team, the village team. Like I said, my father, mum and dad took me to all the games, very supportive. And we played like all weekend, Saturdays, Sundays for two different teams. I guess I just loved it and just kept going, and it just became a huge part of my life from very small, playing with my friends. And as I got a little bit older, actually, I mean, all through my teenage years, playing at high school, playing for my local village in the men's team when I was about 13, 14 years old, putting me in the center of defense as a sweeper because I was obviously too little to play with the men at that age, but I was there, I was playing, and continuing to play basically with my friends right up until about 17, I would say. Yeah. And then from there, I was fortunate enough to sort of jump the levels rapidly. Not within the professional game, not within the semi-pro game. I was outside of that system, but I got spotted later on.
Yeah.
And then I became a pro.
Yeah. So like you said, you started in non-league football, but then you got spotted. Newcastle came in for you. Now, obviously, Newcastle in the 90s went through a great spell, obviously getting promoted. But for you, what was it like to go to Newcastle after working so hard and just getting better?
Well, I'd played... previously to this, I was in college, playing in college. I don't think I was really standing out too much at that age. But then the town where I was at college, Kings Lynn, I went there as a sort of reserve team player, really. And then all of a sudden I jumped, like I said, I jumped the levels when I was about 18, 19. I got into the Kings Lynn first team at the start of their new season. Like I said, I don't think I've been really an amazing standout player, but I was doing good, So yeah. I traveled with the first team, sat on the bus with the experienced pros and watched them play cards all the way to Wales and back, and yeah. things like this. You always need the young guys to go and fill the bus with the bench position. So that's what I did my time. But we played Kettering Town in a pre-season friendly. And I had a good game, and I got a call on the Monday from Kettering saying that they wanted me to go to Kettering. So this was, they were at the time were in the conference, which is now the one league below the professional league, but almost professional. So I went there, and I was there for not long, about 3 months, but we were top of the conference. I think they call it, I'm not sure if they call it step one now, but it's the 5th tier of English football. And every game that we were playing at Kettering, we were being watched by scouts. We were being watched by other clubs, and in the dressing room before the game and in training during the week, we were getting, a lot of the guys were getting kind of excited because they weren't sure who was being watched, and what was going on. But we knew that Newcastle and Everton and other clubs were turning up in droves to our games. I had no clue. I had no clue at the time that I was one of the ones being watched, but I was a new boy on the scene. And there was another guy called Stan Collymore playing in the same league. And Stan went on to have a fabulous career. So he was in the conference at the same time. I think we might be about the same age. And he was standing out really, really well at that time. I didn't think it was me, right? So, but yeah, I got a phone call after about 3 months in. The Kettering manager called me and said, "Andy, Newcastle want to sign you." So I didn't really. You just don't really feel like it's going to happen to you. Let's put it that way. It's professional football, right? So you just think that everybody is genius, right? And you think it's not going to happen to me. And to be honest, I never even really considered that was going to happen to me. So yeah, so Newcastle came in for me. I got on the train, went up to Newcastle. They showed me the stadium, Jim Smith, and I went in and I sat there in an office, and they said, "Okay, well, here's your contract." I won't tell you what it was, but they put a piece of paper in front of me, and it was good.
Yeah.
And I said, "All right." He said, "Okay, well, sign the piece of paper." And I said, "Well, I'm going to go home and think about it for the weekend." And Jim Smith nearly fell off his chair. He's like, "Andy," he said, "if Newcastle came in for me," he said, "I would have walked to Newcastle to sign the contract." I said, "Well, I'm here on my own, and I want to go home and think about it." So I went home for the weekend, and I was getting like phone calls every hour from Kettering and from Newcastle, and "Are you going to sign? Are you going to sign?" Like, I don't know. So, but of course I signed, and it was amazing. That was the start of my career.
Yeah. I mean, it must have been a great experience for you. You made 43 appearances for Newcastle and scored 11 goals, but just being around a higher level, I mean, making that step must have felt at least a little validating. So my next question for you is just, like I said, Newcastle had such a great period of time in the 90s. What was it like being around the club when that period of time was really just starting to happen?
Well, it was really, so when I joined, Newcastle were actually struggling, and Jim Smith got fired shortly after I signed. Hopefully it was nothing to do with me, but that they were having a rough time, and when I arrived, it was a huge shock. I mean, I have to say, because you train every day and then you have the whole rest of the day free. You're finished by midday. You go home and you sit there and you're just bored, right? Because you've got nothing to do. You can only train a couple of hours a day. The body can only take so much training, although some clubs go morning and afternoon. That was very rare back then. In fact, I don't think teams did it 30 years ago. Jim got fired, and then Ozzy Ardiles came, and I really learned with Ozzy, and it was brilliant because Ozzy was a World Cup winner with Argentina, just an amazing guy, amazing coach for an attacker, certainly for a striker. He loved to attack, as the West Brom faithful will know.
Yeah.
But his defensive side of the game was a little less complete, I think, back then. So we used to play some really crazy games where we'd win or lose by 7-5 or 6-6 and things like this. But Ozzy loved it, and he was very encouraging towards the young players. He really encouraged the young players to get out on the field and just play their game and all that kind of thing, and so that was a good period. But then Ozzy left, went to West Brom. He got fired, and they brought Kevin Keegan in, and Keegan he was the England coach and England player, massive character. But he didn't play me, so Unfortunately, my time there, when the good things were happening, was limited. Keegan didn't give me much of a chance, so he sold me to West Brom, which is where Ozzy went to. But I have to say, it was great being around Newcastle while they were getting this revival, because it's a huge club. I mean, it's on the scale of the Man United. It's on the scale of, you know, the biggest clubs in Europe with the fan base. They just have a massive fan base. You know, just where they are, and I mean, I don't know what the stadium. I went there with Charlton my last year, and I think it was 60,000 or something, and it was full. And we silenced them because I think we beat them 1-0. But huge club. And when it was coming back up again, reviving under Keegan's management and Terry McDermott, it was an amazing place to be. And you know, they just had an incredible season. It was sad that I wasn't able to be a part of that, because I sort of really just sat on the sidelines, and I did go to 1 or 2 games and sat in the stands. But I know what that's like now for players that don't get on the field, and you don't get that chance. But you know, every coach has got his style and way, and it's okay. You know, that's it happens. I was lucky enough that I got to move on to West Brom, and you know, went from strength to strength there.
When did you first hear about going to West Brom?
So how it worked for me was I was sort of annexed from the first team at Newcastle, and I was having a bit of a rough time dealing with that, because I wasn't really ever given a chance to play. And I kind of felt a little bit sorry for myself. So after a little while, I have to say I let my training slacken off a bit. And but I got a phone. I got a message to go see Keegan at the St James's Park. Go to his office, and so I went to see him, and he said that they'd had an offer from West Brom. And you know, Ozzy was the coach there, and so he said, you know, we're happy to let you go, and I was happy to go because I wasn't playing. I mean, if you're a professional footballer, you want to play football, right? So so I went to West Brom and met Ozzy, and in his office, they invited me down, and we had a meeting. They offered me a contract, and it was funny back then because I had an agent help. I mean, everybody thinks they need an agent, and probably some do, some don't. But we sat in the meeting, and Ozzy asked the agent to leave the room, and I knew Ozzy very well, right? So, but I was still a young guy. I was like 22, 23. And he said, "Andy, we don't have any money at this club." They couldn't even sign me then. I didn't know the inside dealings of the contract, but he said, "Andy, this agent is not going to get you any more money that I'm going to offer you right now." He said, "So he doesn't need to be here." And I was like, okay. And he's like, "So look, I'm just helping you out here and trying to do you a favor, because you're going to end up paying this guy, and he's not going to get you any more money than I can give you." So what a stand-up fella, not for the agent, of course, but I'd already kind of said to the guy, well, you know, so we came in and we did the meeting together anyway. It turned out later that that West Brom really didn't have any money. And that they had to take me on loan to the end of the season. So God knows what kind of deal they had. Maybe they were going to just kick me out if it didn't work out. I've no idea. I think they agreed to sign me on loan with an agreement to pay 150,000, I think it was, pounds, for me at the end of the season when they got some money. So Ozzy. So we agreed a contract, and then Ozzy. I stayed there for the night, and we went upstairs and went and watched. Or in the evening, I watched the game,
Yeah.
sat in the stands and watched the West Brom's game, and went back home to Newcastle, grabbed me bags and went back.
Yeah.
And I became a West Brom player.
Yeah, that's a very West Brom thing to do with the signings. They do an awful lot of that, especially in the recent years, with the signing a player on loan and then having an obligation to buy later. But anyways, that's neither here nor there.
All right, maybe I start. Maybe
you started that trend. So as soon as you got yourself back into playing day in, day out, you got into the West Brom team and you made an absolute dream debut, having scored a hat-trick at your first home game. What was that experience like?
Well, like as I touched on a minute ago, I'd been playing with Newcastle, but not really playing, and my physical conditioning was not as good as it should have been. But I could score goals. You know, I was a good goal scorer. So I came on as a sub away at Bradford, I believe, and I scored a header. And then I mean, literally, I arrived and it was like, you know, training straight into the squad for the first game. Yeah. I mean, you don't bring a player in unless you're not, because they have youth reserve team and stuff. I mean, if you're bringing a player in, you're putting him in the squad, and that's what happened to me. I was put into the squad. West Brom were right on the verge of the playoffs at the time. Yeah. And I think it was kind of like what's going on right now. They just drifted out of the top three. Yeah. And they needed some kind of impetus to get it going again. And a striker's always good for that. So, yeah, the home game came around and I started badly. My fitness wasn't good. I struggled after half time, was getting booed by the home fans. Can you imagine that on your debut? Yeah. So this is one of the things that, okay, I was a good player, but you really learn who's got something about them, because you gotta hang in there. Yeah. It's very easy I saw it happen at West Brom. I saw players get broken by the fans getting on their back. Not just West Brom, it happens everywhere. You have a couple of bad games, but for me, it was, you know, I'm a bit of a stubborn old fool, and I just hung in. And second half, Aussie, you have to keep you on the field. You can't bring me off after 45 minutes. Yeah, kept me on, and I scored 3 goals in 7 minutes. I think at the time it was a record for the fastest hat trick. So one went in, then another went in, then another went in, and suddenly we won the game. And of course, you know, you're all's the hero. Forgotten. Apart from me telling the story over and over again. Yeah. But all's forgotten, and suddenly you're a hero. You win the game, you get 3 points, and that was the start of our epic run to Wembley in the playoffs. Yeah. So you touched on a little bit how it could be when things aren't quite going your way, but when things were going West Brom's way in the 90s, when you were there, what was the atmosphere like for you at the Hawthorns? Oh, it was outstanding. We had some really special nights there. I think the one that goes down in history, and most West Brom fans will talk about it, is the Swansea game. Yeah. The second leg of the playoffs. I mean, it was like the stadium was just rocking. I mean, you know, we win that game, we go to Wembley. Yeah. We win at Wembley, we get promotion. So it had been one long party, really, because when I'd arrived, they were on the verge of the playoffs. We got in the playoffs, and now we're playing Swansea in a 2-leg playoff final, playoff semi-final. And it was just amazing. I mean, pull up the video if you ever want to watch something and get goosebumps. It was just crazy how. Yeah. You've seen the boing baggies. Yeah. Right, the jumping up and down thing, and so the whole stadium was doing this, and we won the game, and you know, we got the pitch invasion, and you know, we got T-shirts and our shorts taken and our socks taken and everything. It was kind of a crazy thing, but got back to the dressing room with a pair of pants on, and you know, just a wild night. But we after that we were up and down for sure in the championship, they call it now, and I have to say we found it a little bit tough going for quite some time, but we definitely had some really special games, and yeah, the fans there just you know, they just loved it. They just loved the success, and the stadium is such a tight, compact stadium, and it creates a beautiful atmosphere. So yeah, you know, we had some great days.
Yeah, and I actually, in research, I watched the video of both the semifinal and the final last night, and I do have to say it's one of the greatest atmospheres I've seen from the Hawthorns, at least. It's a total shame I wasn't alive to see it. Of course, one of your biggest goals for West Brom was in the final at Wembley. You scored the very first goal in the 3-0 win against Port Vale. It must have been obviously such an emotional time, like you said, with the last game ending in such a positive way, and having the pitch invasion. But what was the feeling like to just keep it going and keep carrying on with the success?
So it was really hard well, actually, it wasn't hard for us as players. There was a lot of excitement around the place. Everybody wanted an interview, the media, of course, the fans were just coming in. I mean, I've seen pictures of people queuing up to get their tickets for the final, which was just, you know, you're going to Wembley, it's the home of English football, big stadium. You know, every kid who plays football in England dreams of playing at Wembley. Yeah. So I think West Brom did an amazing job. The coaching staff did an incredible job of keeping everything on an even keel, because it could have been very easy for us to get carried away with the emotion of the event. But we're professional footballers and we have to go win that game.
Yeah.
You know, I don't say we have to. It is our job to go and try win that game. So the fans have the emotion. We have to go and do the work on the training ground.
Yeah.
But I think at that time of the year, I don't remember the gap, how long it was, but at that time, and now I do a lot of coaching. So I now understand more the psychological side of preparation, and preparation for players, and the management of players, and not just players, everybody, you know, everybody involved, because even the coaches can get a little bit carried away. The kit man, the wash, the lady doing the wash, everybody can get, you know, because that's all everybody was going to talk about.
Yeah.
So Ozzy was for sure the right man for the job. I mean, he kept every training session was just light and fun and enjoyable. He tried not to put the pressure on us, because that can easily spill over into training when the situation is becoming more extreme.
Yeah,
it's a big deal. We're going to Wembley, right? It's a huge deal. But he kept the pressure off us. He kept the training fun. I mean, we used to do a lot of games and hitting the crossbar and rondos and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, it worked. We went to Wembley and we played out really, really well. We played an amazing game. I mean, Port Vale didn't really threaten us much. And we controlled that game from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, I just, again, watching the highlights of that game, it's an atmosphere of West Brom fans as I haven't seen in my lifetime. It was absolutely incredible. And of course, you scored that header, which it was sort of a pinball goal the way it worked. Obviously, the goalkeeper got his hand to it and it eventually came to you and it was right into the corner. Is there any memory of that particular goal, or was it just pure adrenaline in that moment?
So a lot of goals. So really, it's just a reaction. You're not really that goal was just trying to get my head on it and just trying to guide it and direct it. Fortunately, I was able to get it into the corner, just out of the reach of the goalkeeper's hand. Most of those things, we just did a whole shooting session for an hour last night, hour and a half with our players, teaching them how to finish, how to react, how to stay in the moment, it's so easy to switch off. It's so easy to not react. But you know, that's the job. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
And you react, and that's it. You react and you try. I mean, I've missed loads. I've scored a bunch.
Yeah.
So, you know, so you're not really thinking. You're just playing on, I wouldn't say adrenaline, but you're just playing on how would I put it?
It's more like instinct, just pure instinct.
Pure instinct, exactly. You're right. It's pure instinct, and that's the training. That's what the training does for you. That teaches you to stay in the moment, to stay focused, and you know, the adrenaline is gone by I would say by the start of the game. Generally, the adrenaline. Well, for me, it was anyway, because we have to play the game. So you walk out at the stadium at the start of the game. My family were there. I met up with a few of them with their faces painted with the West Brom colours, and you know, all of this. And I got tickets for a whole bunch of friends from Norfolk who came to the game. So that was an hour and a half, 2 hours before kickoff. The ride to the stadium, of course, before that. With sit in the bus, seeing all the fans as you're driving down Wembley Way, whatever it's called, I can't remember now. But that's when the emotion is there.
Yeah.
I think. But you know, you get in you go out on the field, you walk around, you go into the dressing room. Suddenly, you start to zone in, you start to focus in, you start to realize that there's work to be done here, and you've got to go out as a team. And there's no, you know, so the adrenaline is there, but you control it, and you focus. You're doing your team talks, you're talking to the coach, the coaches are talking to you. They're trying to get you focused in on the game. They're trying to control your emotion. They're trying to control your adrenaline. Because you can let it you can get carried away with it if you cannot play on adrenaline, because it just overrides your brain. You react in the wrong way to everything. So you have to then, you know, work with your skills and instincts.
So you spoke a little bit about just strikers. You played with some great strikers at West Brom. Obviously a person who I've interviewed and I've gotten the chance to chat with a little bit, Paul Pescasolito is one. Also, one big one that all West Brom fans know as Super Bob Taylor. What was it like to play with such a talented just group of players?
When I arrived at West Brom, Bob was the hero. He'd scored, I think that season he scored like 45 goals, something. I mean, that's just an insane amount of goals to score in 1 year. So when I arrived, I was obviously who you play with. You might have chemistry, you might not have chemistry. It depends. Some strikers, we respect each other, but we may not be friends. We might not get on, but blah, blah, blah. But there's a few over the years that I've played with that you just really don't have any connection with. But me and Bob just hit it off immediately. We just hit it off. Really nice fella. And for a guy that scored 45, you'll probably be able to correct me on how many he got. But for somebody who scored that many goals in a season, his attitude was spot on. He did not think he was bigger than anybody else. He was just fabulous to play with. He didn't have a chip on his shoulder. He didn't feel like he needed to be treated special in any way. And I say these things because some strikers do. Some players do. And Bob didn't have that at all. He never had that feeling, never gave off that feeling. He was just a wonderful player. And I learned so much from him because he was, although he was an amazing goal scorer, he was a great team player. So when I went to Newcastle, I played a little bit, but I hadn't really learned the striker's role. I'd got in the team, but no one had really taught me yet how to play the striker's role. So Bob was that guy. He taught me. It wasn't so much that he taught me. We emulate each other. We emulate people who we look up to, I suppose. Yeah. And of course, I saw Bob as the star of the show. So if someone can score 45 goals, that's good enough for me. I'll copy what you're doing, right? Yeah, exactly. So I watched I was watching how he was playing, and he would run the channels. He would come short. He would keep the ball. He's immensely strong. He could hold the ball up, bring the other team members into play. He was unselfish. So for a striker to score that many goals is unheard of, to be unselfish. That normally they're there to put the ball in the back of the net. But he would set me up. Yeah, he would gladly set me up with chances. And so we became a really nice partnership. And I loved playing with Bob for many years. Sadly, he started to struggle with a few injuries after a little while. So our time was cut short a little bit. But I would say he like I said, he taught me everything about the striker's role initially. And of course, I refined it over the years with working with other coaches and players. Yeah, that's great. So I have actually a question that's another fan's question. One of my best mates, who is also a content creator for West Brom, under the name WBA Already Inspired, asked if I could ask you, who was the biggest prankster of the West Brom team while you were there? Okay. Well, I'll tell you a story. So this probably happens in every dressing room, but we did have a very good camaraderie amongst our group. But I do remember Darren Bradley nailing Steve Lilwall's trainers to the wooden bench where we used to the changing room. So Steve had these really old trainers that he could, and everybody keeps saying to him, Steve, you got to change these trainers. You got to change these trainers, right? And running shoes, right? And so in the end, one day, Brad's nailed the running shoes to. And Steve goes to pick him up, and then I see, of course, he destroys them trying to get them off and stuff like this. So yeah, Brad's had a wicked sense of humor. We had a good dressing room. Carl Heggs was a bit like that. He had a great sense of humor, and it was a bit cheeky, I suppose. Yeah, Stevie too. Yeah, so, it must have been a part of the success, right? Because you can't always be serious and on the ball 24/7, else you won't be able to enjoy it. And then you not enjoying it won't allow you to put in the proper amount of effort to get the success, right? So, I mean, obviously you're gonna have fun. You're with a group every day, and you're working to achieve something, but you have to decompress. You have to, again, because I'm now a coach, I have a much clearer understanding of this, of how you have to you have to understand what is going on in the dressing room, and not every day has to be an intense day. So you got to have some fun. You got to enjoy yourselves. It's a group of 24, 25 young guys, so of course they're going to be some arguments. They're going to be some things get out of hand sometimes. They're going to be some stupid things happen, but you definitely have to you got to enjoy it. I mean, you're playing professional football, so it's a wonderful job. And yeah, so we you know, quite often you have a lot of moments like this at football clubs.
Yeah. So probably the most difficult question I'll ask you today. Obviously, we spoke about Wembley and we spoke about the Swansea game. What would you say is your favorite West Brom memory?
Well, I think we've already spoken about it. I mean, obviously, Wembley scoring that's it. That's the dream.
Exactly.
Right there. That's the dream. That's every kid's dream in England, is to go to Wembley and score, I think. Maybe it's changed, but I don't think so. I mean, I think that's it. That's what I did. You know, I mean, I could say, well, you know, I scored goals and a hat trick here and blah blah blah. You know, I scored some really nice goals, and stuff like that. But that has to be it. I mean, we've already spoken about the Swansea game at home and the atmosphere and the feeling of that game. So that was amazing. But no, I mean, scoring at Wembley, that's it. That's the pinnacle of a career. Well, you know, I think so. It's tough to beat that.
Yeah, and of course, in a game of such significance as well, it's one thing, obviously, if you had get the chance to play there and it's not a very meaningful game, which there is not an awful lot of not meaningful games at Wembley, but
right.
But
so
that's
yeah.
You know, so my very last question for you is just simply, what are you up to now?
So after West Brom, I moved to Charlton. Had a good time there, but I retired early, 30 years old, 31. I bought some property in Belize, which is in Central America. We've been running a lodge here, an adventure travel company, for many years, but COVID has ended that. But also along the way, for the last 6 years, we've been developing a program, an academy, and that's going great. I touched on earlier about, you know, moving into the coaching side of things, and so now I'm developing we have a program. We also have a club. It's a young team, 16 to 21 years old, and we've been identifying players that we think have potential. We've been looking at, we have a certain way that we like to play. We have a certain culture, if you like, that we want in our club.
Yeah.
A certain type of player. So we've been trying to find those, and we think it's working. We got some really nice, the football they're playing is outstanding.
Yeah.
And they're progressing really, really well. We're finding new players as we go along. We're actually communicating now with international academies in England.
Yeah, that's great.
So we've got 2 or 3 that are one actually two of them really want to partner up with us. So we're in discussions with them, and we'll see if anything materializes with that. So that, in fact, I've been talking to West Brom today also about going back to visit, because I hopefully will be there in spring or in mid 22, depending on the COVID restrictions and all this.
Yeah.
We have a few clubs in the UK that have invited our players to go to train with them, which is going to be a wonderful opportunity. But of course, there are going to be certain barriers to that. But that's another story. So it's exciting, and you know, I'm here with my family. My boys, my oldest is at university. My youngest is he's into music and arts, and he's 15. He'll be moving. You know, we'll be seeing what they're going to do. My oldest loves football. He's playing football and doing well. And my wife and my wife here. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. It's a lot of football nowadays. So you know, I've just finished doing all my performance analysis and scouting courses and stuff like that. So I've started to get to work a lot with that. which is fascinating, and the modern way of looking at players and how you assess them, talent identification. So big help, and with what we're doing with the coaching. So yeah, that's basically in a big nutshell what I'm up to.
Well, thank you so much, Andy, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Guys, I mean, this guy has played for West Brom, scored some big goals. So he's a legend. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Baden. Wonderful interview. Great work, and keep it up.